Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. The IDF launches a new ground maneuver in the southern Gaza Strip dubbed Operation Might and Sword. President Donald Trump warns of secondary tariffs to countries attempting to circumvent sanctions against the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Islamic Republic Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei stresses his aspiration to see the state of Israel eradicated. The IDF launched a number of attacks on Hamas infrastructure in several locations across the Gaza Strip overnight. The IDF utilized aerial and artillery fire to destroy the Hamas targets in question. Following the airstrikes, IDF ground forces reportedly began to operate on a broad scale in the town of Rafah of the southern Gaza Strip. The Qatari mouthpiece Al Jazeera reported, citing the Hamas-run health ministry, that 17 people were killed in the Israeli strikes. Meanwhile, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz released a statement in which he dubbed the fresh IDF ground offensive in Gaza as Operation Might and Sword, stressing that its expansion aims at crushing and cleaning the area from terrorists and terror infrastructure and sees large areas that will be added to Israel's security zones. Jerusalem's top defense official went on to call upon the residents of Gaza to act immediately to eliminate Hamas and return the 59 hostages from captivity, which is the only way to end the war. It is important to highlight that the stated prerequisite by the Israeli defense minister for the war to end is fully coordinated with the United States under President Donald Trump.
What I can tell you is what I've spoken with the President on. He very much remains committed to backing Israel, and it was only because of this President and his team's leadership that we had a temporary ceasefire in Gaza, that we were able to bring many hostages home, and the President made it very clear to Hamas, you get the hostages out, all of them, or there will be hell to pay, and Hamas is certainly witnessing what it feels like for all hell to be paid, and the President supports Israel's right to defend itself.
Turning to the so-called West Bank districts of Judea and Samaria, where Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz and Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich held a joint tour to closely follow efforts to confront illegal construction by the Palestinian Authority, which, according to both senior Israeli officials, aims to deliberately obstruct the development of Israeli communities. During the tour, the ministers visited many areas throughout Judea and Samaria, including the settlements of Kerem Re'im and Sde Ephraim, which were recently recognized by the government in Jerusalem. In joint remarks made at the end of the tour, Ministers Katz and Smotrich stressed the vital importance of confronting efforts by the Palestinian Authority to alter reality on the ground by illegal construction projects, which they stressed to be no less important for Israel's national security than the ongoing military's counter-terror campaign that seeks to uproot Iran-funded terror infrastructure throughout the heartlands of the State of Israel.
יהודה ושומרון הם ליבה של ארץ ישראל ההיסטורית. בימי מלחמת חרבות ברזל נוכחנו גם בחשיבות הביטחונית של ההתיישבות היהודית ביהודה ושומרון כמגינת לב הארץ. מדינת ישראל לא תפקיר את ביטחון המתיישבים, ולא תאפשר לאבו מאזן ולרשות הפלסטינית להשתמש בבנייה בלתי חוקית ככלי ליצירת איום אסטרטגי על ההתיישבות, כפי שאנחנו מרסקים את הטרור הפלסטיני במחנות הטרור של ג'נין, טול כרם ונור א-שמס, כך נמנע כל ניסיון של הרשות להשתלט על שטחי יהודה ושומרון ולפגוע בהתיישבות היהודית. המדיניות שלנו ברורה וההנחיות למפקדים בשטח ברורות. להעמיק את האכיפה, להרחיב את פעולות הפיקוח ולהרוס כל מבנה בלתי חוקי ללא יוצא מן הכלל. מול הטרור של המחבלים ומול הטרור השקט של ניסיונות ההשתלטות הבלתי חוקית, נגיב בנחישות. יהודה ושומרון הם לב הארץ, ואנחנו נגן עליהם בכל האמצעים.
מאז 1967 ועד היום לא נעשתה מהפכה כזו ביהודה ושומרון. הממשלה שלנו פועלת לפיתוח ההתיישבות ביהודה ושומרון, לא תאפשר השתוללות של בנייה ערבית בלתי חוקית שהפכה למכת מדינה בעשורים האחרונים. הממשלה שלנו הכירה עד כה ב-28 יישובים חדשים מאז הקמתה. בנוסף אנחנו מקיימים אכיפה מוגברת במקומות שבהם לא אכפו בעבר, כמו השמורה ההסכמית בגוש עציון, שטח אש 918 בדרום הר חברון ואזורים נוספים. חשוב שתדעו שבשנה האחרונה שברנו שיא של הריסות של בנייה בלתי חוקית ערבית ביהודה ושומרון. אנחנו אבל מבינים שזה לא מספיק. על מנת להכריע את המערכה, אנחנו ביחד צריכים לעשות שימוש בכלים אסטרטגיים נוספים שיבילו אל התוצאה המבוקשת. מתיישבי יהודה ושומרון הם לא אזרחים סוג ב'. ממשלת ישראל שלנו תעמוד על כך שהם יהיו זכאים לביטחון כמו כל אזרח אחר במדינת ישראל. יהודה ושומרון הם ערש מולדתנו, ארץ התנ"ך. אנחנו כאן כדי להישאר.
Meanwhile, as the U.S. military's Central Command continues its naval and aerial strikes against the Iranian proxy Ansar Allah, which is dominated by the Houthi tribe in Yemen, two senators, to include ultra-left progressive Democrat Jeff Merkley and ultra-isolationist Republican Rand Paul, questioning the validity of President Donald Trump's commitment to freedom of navigation, going as far as to claim that efforts to confront the Yemeni terror group serve to embolden the Houthis and rally their recruiting base. It is important to know that the two senators who seemingly personify the two edges of the so-called horseshoe theory have been leading proponents of diplomatic overtures to Iran, with Senator Rand Paul aligning himself with Senator Bernie Sanders in the past in opposition of exerting new sanctions on the Islamic Republic of Iran and North Korea. Meanwhile, in response to the latter, White House Press Secretary Leavitt stressed that she absolutely rejects the claims relayed by the two senators against the Trump administration's decision to confront the Houthi terrorism.
I would absolutely reject those claims. These Houthi strikes have been incredibly successful. Last time I was at this podium, there were more than 100 successful strikes. There have now been over 200 successful strikes against the Houthis. Iran is incredibly weakened as a result of these attacks. And we have seen they've taken out Houthi leaders. They've taken out critical members who were launching strikes on naval ships and on commercial vessels. And this operation will not stop until the freedom of navigation in this region is restored, which is a critical principle, and this president stands behind our Defense Department, who's doing a tremendous job.
In other yet related news, China, which enjoyed roughly 90% of all of Iran's sanctioned oil exports during the previous 4 years, is now calling upon the United States to end all sanctions, pressure, and coercion on the Islamic Republic of Iran, insisting that it will lead nowhere. Instead, Beijing is urging Washington to reinvigorate the Obama administration's 2015 nuclear agreement, or the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, stopping short from pointing out that the International Atomic Energy Agency had already rendered the document obsolete.
伊朗核问题全面协议的执行因美方执意退出而受到干扰，美方应当展现政治诚意。 早日回归复谈，制裁施压、武力威胁没有出路。伊朗核问题再次走到关键的十字路口，局势存在升级的风险，但也蕴藏着通过对话谈判达成政治外交解决方案的重要机会。当务之急是有关方都秉持向前看的建设性态度，加大外交努力，为复谈创造条件。
It is important to know that the remarks by the Chinese Foreign Ministry comes amid heightened concerns over rising prospects of a joint American-Israeli attack against Tehran's nuclear installations. However, before such an attack occurs, U.S. President Donald Trump aims to slap Tehran with additional sanctions, alongside possibly secondary tariffs on countries which try to circumvent the so-called maximum pressure campaign, chief most Communist China.
We're going to make a decision on secondary tariffs on Iran based on whether or not they're going to make a deal. If they're going to make a deal, then we're never going to put secondary tariffs on. We're going to hope they have a great, long, and successful life as a country. But we'll see what happens. It's very interesting. I can't imagine them doing anything else but making a deal. I would prefer a deal to the other alternative, which I think everybody in this plane knows what that is. And that's not going to be pretty, and I do not prefer that.
Meanwhile, in Tehran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, during an address to his ardent followers over the weekend, insisted that an Israeli-American attack against Iran was not likely.
مواضع ما همه بدانند مواضع ما همون مواضعی است که بود دشمنی آمریکا و رژیم صهیونیستی هم همونی است که بود تهدید میکنن که شرارت خواهند کرد البته اگر شرارتی انجام بگیره ما خیلی اطمینان نداریم احتمال زیاد نمیدیم که از بیرون شرارتی انجام بگیره اما اگر شرارتی انجام بگیره قطعاً ضربه متقابل محکم خواهند خورد.
Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. And as we've entered into the month of April, I would like to highlight that TV7 Israel is a donation-based ministry with all of our productions reliant on your support. Therefore, if you're blessed by the content of our programs, please donate. You can do so via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. In that same line, I would like to thank our TV7 family of supporters. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hessen, wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we'll see you during our next update. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.